Is it time for AEW to do this with MJF is a question in which I'm going to answer here in today's video because I think it's the right course of action. Now, MJF has been on a very interesting run as of late. Now, obviously, heading into 2024, he was AEW World Champion. His plans with him, with Adam Cole, got blew up. It was not his fault. He lost the world title to Samoa Joe. Now, he took months off. In fact, he didn't return until the summer because he was trying to heal up from some nagging injuries. I mean, this guy was truly beat up to the point where a lot of people thought he was going to be going away for at least a year because he would have to undergo surgery and recover from that. But that was not the case. He returned on the June 19th episode of Dynamite going over Rush. He went over, he at least to go on a Forbidden Door pay-per-view event a couple nights later. And then he goes over Will Ospreay on the July 17th episode of Dynamite to win the international title. Okay? He goes on and he beats Kyle Fletcher and he beats Michael Aku. And then he ultimately drops the American title, the international title, back to Will Ospreay at All in August. He goes into a feud with Daniel Garcia, goes over Daniel Garcia at All Out. He enters into a program with Roderick Strong and Adam Cole, and that is really where things went downhill for MJF because they inserted Roderick Strong into this. He didn't need to be in this, so we had to waste a month, and MJF went over Roderick Strong at Full Gear, and then he goes over Adam Cole in the Dynamite Diamond Ring final at World's End in December. He then is into a feud with Jeff Jarrett in which no one asked for, although it actually turned out to be better than I thought, but they drew it out so much. He goes over Dustin Rhodes on the February 11th episode of Dynamite, and now we are once again back into a feud with Hangman Page, with seemingly the Jeff Jarrett feud not over, but on pause, and we're going to get to it eventually. Now, on this week's episode of Dynamite, him and Hangman Page had a face-off. I thought it was a very good segment, setting the scene for their match. Here's what I was thinking, though. I understand that you saw the Jeff Jarrett feud hanging out there. I love his feud with Hangman Page, two of AEW's pillars, two of AEW's most over stars. That's a good thing. But I also think we also have this looming black cloud over AEW in which I think MJF can fix, and I'll explain that in this video. I think the black cloud, obviously, is Jon Moxley and the Death Riders and the World Heavyweight title, which, by the way, we haven't seen because it's in a briefcase for months. I understand that he's in a feud with Adam Copeland. Now, Adam Copeland could easily beat Jon Moxley, and that's fine, and Cope can be the world champion. That's great. That's fine. That's awesome. Here's where I'm thinking, though. I think there has been too much of a narrative of two things. Number one, that MJF has fallen off the face of the earth, and he's really taken a back seat, and to a certain degree he has in the last several months. And number two is you need more goodwill in AEW within that fan base and with the hardcores, and I think putting the world title on MJF would certainly be the case. So here's what I'm suggesting. Here is what I'm thinking. So you do MJF Hangman Page at Revolution. Obviously, we're going to get Jon Moxley and Copeland for the world title at Revolution. And so if I'm Tony Khan, if I'm trying to turn this ship around, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm suggesting. This is what I'm proposing. I would have Copeland go over Jon Moxley at Revolution. I would have MJF go over Hangman Page at Revolution. And then I would have MJF, the heel, go over Copeland, a babyface, for the World Heavyweight title at Double or Nothing in May. That's what I would do because it can get Copeland to be the world champion. It can get the title off of Jon Moxley. It can get MJF a notable feud, a notable a win in that. I mean, something he hasn't really gotten since World's End. Kind of get the goodwill back on track, shut everyone up about MJF's falling off a cliff and he's not a big star and yada, yada, yada. And it adds prestige to the world title. And then you can do a easy transition from Copeland to MJF and get the world title back on MJF. Because if you look at the AEW product, which has obviously been down, television ratings, just interest in general, although they have had a pretty strong run of shows as of late, I think if you look at it and you go, okay, how can we get MJF back on top and, back on the main event scene, and how can we get AEW and its goodwill back? Well, I think those two go hand to hand, right? Like if you look at MJF's title run, that was what the glue, he was the glue that kind of kept everything together through, the last 6 months or so of AEW in 2023. I mean, for me, someone who watches AEW on a weekly basis, at least Dynamite, I do not watch Collision. I'm not going to do that. I think during that time period, MJF was a highlight of that show. Like, it got me, okay, we just got to wait for another MJF, because if you go back and you look at those shows, it was like MJF was having multiple segments on those shows. Like, he was opening, he was closing, he was having multiple segments. And why do you do that? Well, it's no different from what WWE did in the Attitude Era, or what they do nowadays, where it's like, okay, you take your biggest stars and you put them in the biggest segments on the show, and you consistently put them on the show throughout the show to hopefully continuously maintain viewers, right? And that's what they did. And that's what AEW did with MJF, and it's a brilliant thing, and I think you should do that, right? I think you gotta get back to that. Like, AEW, yes, you've brought in a lot of former WWE talent, and yes, they do have star power, but you also have a ton of young, unproven talent, or young, proven talent. I think the issue with AEW, and it goes with MJF, is like, okay, take your young talent, in which has charisma, who can cut a promo, use those people. Don't rely on, well, this guy's going to give me a 5-star match, and Dave Meltzer's going to praise about it, right? Like, that's one of the narratives that I absolutely hate about AEW's booking philosophy. It's like, no. I understand that John Moxley's your reliant. He's your guy that you lean on in tough times. I get all that, but he is not, in my opinion, he is not a top tier elite main event star. He's just not. He's been the world champion multiple times. He's been a world champion in WWE, but he's never been an elite type guy. He's never been a Cody Rhodes or a Roman Reigns or a John Cena or an MJF, or even CM Punk and all those, where it's like, when you put him on the card, does he move numbers? Does he sell tickets, right? Hangman Page, he moved tickets. Bryan Danielson, he moved tickets. Swerve Strickland, he moved tickets, right? Like, there's only a small group of guys that can do that. And how do you build up more stars to get them to that point? Well, they have to work with the elite type stars. And Jon Moxley's been around and he's worked with those guys, but he just hasn't gotten there yet. I think putting the world title on MJF would absolutely do so.